In this video, I'll be going over how I made over $21,000 using FriendTech in just over a month. I'll also be discussing airdrop farming strategy so you can maximize ROI on your capital. That being said, let's get right into it. A little bit over a month ago, I deposited 0.1 ETH to my FriendTech account, and now my portfolio value sits at 13.3 ETH, which is an effective 133x. I did make 2.2 ETH in trading fees, but most of my capital gains has come from buying keys cheap and early and then holding it or selling it at much higher levels. The FriendTech TVL has been up only and now currently sits at $29 million, and the TVL has been very, very sticky. One of the reasons is that it's a really new meta, it's a really new game, it's really, really fun. If you're observing this from the sidelines, it might be hard to understand, but as soon as you download it, start engaging, buying some keys, I think you would understand. And a lot of the speculation lies in the airdrop farming aspect, which I'll talk about later. And people are incentivized to buy keys, hold keys, and everything is going up. Everyone's making a lot of paper wealth. It seems really, really frothy right now, but for that reason, there's very little reasons to bridge out of the platform. Even if I make a bunch of money, sell keys, I'm gonna keep that ETH in there just because just so I can reinvest my ETH into other keys and hopefully make a lot more money. And as a result, if there's only TVL inflows coming into the application and no one's bridging out, then that means that all the inflows are buying new keys. So the average key price just has to go up. It's really similar to the 2021 Alt L1 rotation theory that I've come up with. And if you knew that capital was going to come into the ecosystem, then it made sense to just buy all the tokens. We're kind of rerunning that playbook, but with social tokens. And because no one really knows what's going on, there's a lot of hype, there's a lot of speculation, and there's a lot of edge to be had, even though it's all perceived edge. No one really knows what's to be honest, no one really knows what's happening. If you want to participate, I recommend going on Twitter, looking up FriendTech FT dash, and then you can probably find people shilling their ref links. So that's probably the best way to get into it. So let's talk about how to make money from this. There are three ways. First is to drive value to your keys and your key holders and collect those 5% royalties. I understand this is less relevant and relatable, so I'll focus on these 2 points: airdrop farming and how to find and buy undervalued gems. So airdrop farming, this is most of the speculation. I currently have 5,000 points and my rank is diamond. And if you do the back of the envelope math, you can kind of theorize that, okay, if they airdrop 20 to 30% of the supply and the FDV is at $200, $400 million, maybe it makes sense for the token to be worth 50 cents to $1, which I think is fairly reasonable. I think it's better to just be conservative just so that you don't overinvest, just to try to maximize your airdrop farming points. Because this airdrop program, they're going to be distributing 100 million points over the 6-month beta period, and we just started month 2. So it's going to be a long process. So I really don't think there's any rush to just go crazy right now. Of course, people are going crazy right now because we're early, and as the TVL is lower, the points are less diluted and whatnot. But we'll talk about the general strategies later on. What's interesting is that FriendTech recently flipped NFTs in terms of trading activity. I mean, it did so in mid to late August, but now we're seeing the secondary pump, and I really don't see why FriendTech can't have 2-3x the volume that NFTs have, because NFTs don't really have attention right now. It's all about the social tokens and buying your friends, right? FriendTech. They do make a bunch of money. So the platform takes 10% fees whenever you buy and sell keys. 5% goes to the creator and 5% goes to the platform. So right now they're generating a bunch of money, and if they can keep it up, then why can't this be a multi-billion-dollar protocol? But the thing with social tokens and anything social media related is that it's really, really hard to compete and I guess fight against the current incumbents. So my current strategy is just farm this thing, use it a lot, have fun, and whenever the token drops, I'll sell it at peak hype. But that's that's currently my mindset. But who knows? Maybe at that point in early 2024, I'll be so euphoric that I'll max 4-year lock it or something. Hopefully they don't implement that because it doesn't really work. But that's kind of what might happen. But let's talk about the points formula. This hasn't been proven by the team, but there have been a lot of people that's kind of back tested the points formula. And there's this new account called Captain Levi. He came out of nowhere. He's one of the top holders of FriendTech keys. I think he made over $500,000 already, and he's trying to be this Mr. Beast of FriendTech. He does a bunch of Twitter spaces. I mean, he's really piling into the FriendTech meta, the current narrative, and I think it's reasonable to expect his account to continue following. But a couple weeks ago he mentioned, okay, he compared all his points across his 1,400 holdings and figured out that the points, the amount of points they get is 85% time weighted holding value. So people are incentivized to buy and hold keys, because the larger your portfolio value, the more points that you're going to get. and then 50% activities. So, people are incentivized to be active, engage with other creators, and also hold a bunch of keys. And that way you get more points. So it kind of is Ponzi-esque in the sense that people are incentivized to hold stuff and not sell because, you give them these imaginary airdrop points that might be worth, 4, 5, 6 figures one day. But, that's the current meta. I'm not here to, hype it up or anything. I'm just trying to figure out, I'm like just trying to tell you what's currently going on and how I'm currently playing it. There's also this new meta called 3-3, and I know this might give some people PTSD, but because of this airdrop points formula, people are saying, hey, if you buy my keys, I'll buy your keys and I'm not going to sell, right? Of course, this doesn't work because at some point someone will sell. But, these are the games that's currently happening. And if everyone's doing this, then, all the keys are going up in value and there's a lot of paper wealth being created here. I think I would say that if you downloaded the application in the first week or two, I think it's almost impossible to lose money. But it's all paper wealth, right? At some point people have to realize their profits. So I do expect a correction to happen multiple times within the 6-month beta period. But hey, in the first month, it's literally up only. It's almost impossible to lose money. And the beauty of the application, like I mentioned earlier, is it's a new meta, it's a new game. No one really knows how to play it. There's no playbook. So we're all experimenting here. Because with other, farming and other NFT metas, we generally know what's gonna happen. So you can kind of front run what you think is gonna happen. But this time around, it's super new. Who knows? Maybe this thing keeps pumping for 6 months. Maybe this thing dumps and then never returns. Who knows, right? So given the current mechanics with the airdrop farming, early adopters are significantly rewarded. And I still think that we're relatively early, but we're in month 2 of the airdrop farming, right? So as we approach month 3, month 4, month 5, I think there's gonna be less incentives to hold these keys, and then we can kind of see some corrections along the way. But a bunch of the key chart looks like this. I'll link this website in the description below, but Racer is the founder of the application. And like I said, if you bought this, if you bought his keys any point, you're not down, right? But this is all paper wealth. At some point, people will sell. Ansem, right? Another CT favorite, up only. Kobe, up only. I mean, everyone's keys are up only. That's kind of the current meta. So it makes sense why everyone's euphoric. Everyone's portfolio values are mooning. They're getting these imaginary airdrop points. But it will end at some point, but I do expect FriendTech to just maintain the hype, maintain the current attention, because I do think that they've done many things right, which I'll talk about. And when it comes to these expensive keys, they're not the best way to make capital gains, but they're considered the Bitcoin or Ether of FriendTech, right? Because these doxed accounts or big accounts, they're very unlikely to rug. So they're probably more likely to maintain its value. So people kind of view them as a vehicle to farm airdrop points. If you want to maximize your capital gains and to really run it up like I did from 0.1 to 13 ETH or something, I think you have to look into undervalued gems. And the market is becoming more efficient, so it's becoming a lot more competitive. But I'll show you my process in my system, and it's I don't intend on anyone copy trading me because I'm not really the best person at this. But I'll just show you what I've been doing, and then maybe you can hopefully learn from it and then apply it to your own trading strategy. So let's talk about how you can utilize FriendTech to generate alpha for yourself. So I think the most opportunity lies in those crypto Twitter accounts that's been grinding, those low follower Anon accounts, and then really buying them, buying those keys, getting alpha from them, or just deciphering what they've been doing, and then figuring out whether you want to copy trade or identify whether the trade has a good risk reward. For example, so Carl, for example, he has he lives in the FOMOverse. He has 3,000 or he has 400 followers or 3,000 following, so that's a 7.5 following to follower ratio. So this guy's a crypto grinder, right? His key sits at below 0.2 ETH, so it's pretty cheap. And he says that he has a realized P&L of roughly $45,000 and a portfolio value of about 30 ETH. So I asked him how are you so early? And he's like, oh yeah, I'm just terminally online, and all I do is open this app 24 hours a day. I'm like, okay, cool. I'm gonna copy trade you. So what we can do is you can go to the activity tab and say, oh my god, this guy's going buying, selling keys every 10 minutes, eating 10% fees both ways, but he's still up a bunch of money. So okay, how can I use this information to my advantage? One thing you can do is go to the holding tab and say, okay, Carl, a super active member, holds 3 Matt Aaron keys, Ghost Casper key. Who are these people? For example, a Matt Aaron, I'm this guy actually is a builder of CLO Finance, which is kind of a wallet tracking application on Telegram. I'm I use it every day. Oh, like I should definitely buy these keys. So I'm like, okay, like I'm going to copy trade Carl, bought this at 0.039 and now it's just at 0.13. So this is like something you can do, just like find high alpha accounts, look at what they're holding and just assume that, okay, you're relatively early, they probably have a thesis. You can buy their keys and like ask them what their thesis is. But this is something you can do. Another thing that I think might be more signal is looking at someone like Carl's like trading history. So I saw that Carl purchased like Kelly Criterion like a little bit over a week ago, and after looking into this, I'm like, okay, like this is an interesting account, so let me look into it. And after doing my own research, I'm like, oh wow, like I think this thing is in a pump. So I just like swept a bunch, and I'm currently like a top holder of Kelly Criterion. I am gonna sell at some point, so like don't like buy this obviously. But to be honest, like who knows, like maybe it keeps going up. I have no idea. And if you go to the Twitter, it's all connected. It's like time for full Kelly. It's kind of weird, right? It's like under like 400 followers. But if you look at the followers like that I know, like mutual followers, there's CL, Smoothie Williams, the guy from Manifold Ventures, Hasaka, Merp, Luke Martin, Zach XBT. I'm like, okay, like there's like no way that this is like some random Anon account. It has like an Etherscan link with a bunch of money. Clearly it's someone's alt account. So I think it warrants an ape by Taiki. So that's kind of what I did. I aped 7 keys. I'm one of the top holders. If you go to the holder tab, I'm like I own 7, right? And I bought like my cost base is like 0.015 and now it's at 0.43, right? So that's like a 30x basically. And if you think that Kelly's like someone's alt account, okay, that's kind of interesting. Maybe like the chat is interesting, right? You can also go to Kelly, right? This alt account's holding tab and say, okay, like it's holding these 3 keys. I'm going to focus on Arun because I saw his name here. And he has a Pikachu PFP and I like Pikachu. So maybe there's like some common ground there. And I bought 5 of Arun's keys at, let's say 0.085-ish. And now it's sitting at 0.3 basically. And one thing that's good to do is to like just buy keys of people with high egos, because they're going to be things like, okay, like I noticed that people are actually accumulating too many of my keys. Please don't challenge me. I am the ruler of my own domain. And he was literally talking about me, right? I was literally the top holder, and this guy's like, okay, like there's like no way that I can let Taiki Maeda be the top holder. I need to buy 6 keys. So worst case scenario, I like break even, or like I just get to sell on his face, right? I just get to dump his keys on his face. So I think studying activities of like smart accounts and then kind of deciphering what that means and doing your own research to say, okay, like maybe this account's good, maybe that account's good, and looking at like mutual holders is like a really good way to think about, okay, like is this undervalued, is this overvalued? But who knows, like maybe I'm like just talking out of my ass. I probably am. But the thing is, right now it's like a positive sum game in terms of paper world, just because TVL has gone up only. App is super fun, no one's selling, so everyone is up money. There's little reasons to bridge out of the platform, and I think the biggest test is what happens after the airdrop. But the airdrop is going to be like 2024 probably, so we're going to see a bunch of hype and speculation in the next 5 months leading up to it, but who knows? Like there's no real way to know. And I understand that this might seem like hyper speculation, but if you think about it, like I'm actually getting a decent amount of utility from these keys. For example, like Maple Leaf Cap talked about Alex, and like, okay, who the hell is Alex? I bought his keys, and he's like this government affairs lead at Paradigm, and every day he's talking about like what's happening in DC regulation, and like I own coins, I own altcoins like MKR and stuff, but to be honest, like these Alexander Grieve keys offer me way more utility than the average altcoin and NFT. So maybe there's like some narrative around that. To be honest, like I'm probably like just being super hyped because everything's going up. But like that's kind of how crypto works, right? Like everything goes up and everyone thinks it's like the future of finance. So let's kind of wrap things up. Summary: everyone's euphoric, everyone's paper wealth is going up, but you can't expect this to go on forever. The airdrop program is 6 months long. We're at month 2. There's no way that it's going to be up only for the entirety of the 6 months. So I expect there will be 30 to 50% corrections along the way. But given the fact that people are not really incentivized to bridge out of the application, sure, we might see scary dips, but I do think that those dips will be bought. So I think it makes sense to have some ETH liquid, so you can buy your keys, and it kind of has like the vibes of early DeFi / early NFT season. So here are some general tips. I don't think it's good to overtrade. I think it makes sense to buy your friends, engage with your friends, and just try to have fun, be patient with opportunities. There's no reason that you have to ape now today with your entire portfolio. Just play it out a little bit if you want, and once you get the hang of it, maybe like scale up your purchases, but understand that, hey, there's going to be scary dips along the way. The 10% fee is insane. And my current plan is to just buy cheap keys. And, like what even are cheap keys, right? Like nobody knows. But I'm going to focus on my buys below 0.5 ETH. And if they go to, higher levels, then I'm going to sell. And, I'm not going to be loyal about it, right? Like, I call them my friends, but if your friends are too expensive, like, you have to take profits on your friends and then reinvest it into more budget friends, right? That's kind of the way I view it. Another cost-efficient way to get into the ecosystem is perhaps buying these FriendTech key aggregators. For example, Meta Keys. If you buy this key, it gives you access to a Discord, and you can read all the chats from all the top accounts. I guess one risk here is that this might not be like the way the team intended this platform to be used. So maybe if you own these aggregator keys, maybe you're not going to get any points. To be honest, who knows? I don't really have a great experience with Meta Keys, and I don't really use key aggregators because a couple weeks ago I was sharing some intimate photos with my key holders, and unfortunately I am one of the keys that Meta Keys holds. So anyone that held Meta Keys got access to my intimate photos. And I complained to FriendTech about this. I hit up the customer support line, no one answered. But now there's this picture of me that was only meant for like my 30 key holders of like me in middle school with the baguette in my mouth. And now this is circulating all over the internet. And I don't like this, right? I thought about moving to OnlyFans, but I'll probably stay because of the airdrop. But who knows? Like if you want like feet pics or whatever, right? Like maybe it's worth buying these key aggregators. It gives you access to like all these chat groups. But I mean, jokes aside, right? Like maybe it's like a good way to get into the ecosystem. I've often like heard like arguments like the bear case of FriendTech. I mean, yeah, like the fees are way too high, but like if things can be changed, like fees, like that's not really like a bear case for FriendTech, right? I think like one of the bear cases, okay, like a social token project, unlikely to work, but I think they do have moats. And people talked about, okay, like if a new competitor emerges with new tokens, they can easily vampire attack away TVL and like influencers. But I think the point where FriendTech like onboarded people like Kobe, I think they've already won. I think it's very unlikely for Kobe to change platforms after so much money has been invested into his own keys. So when it comes to social tokens, I feel like any platform that onboards like the top 10 creators for any like niche sector like crypto, I think it's really hard to dethrone them. So for that reason, like if FriendTech were to fail, it's not going to be because a new competitor came. It's going to be because like the app sucks. And like so far the app is good. So that's like one point in favor. They already have network effects within crypto, and this isn't really like a moat for FriendTech, but I do notice this trend of progressive web apps to get around Apple Store policies. So if you download FriendTech, you don't really go through the Apple Store. You just go to the website and then create like web app, and then that way you get like FriendTech gets around like the 30% Apple Store fees, which is like pretty insane. So I know like, I would think that like more and more applications will go this route, like even non-crypto apps in the future. So like, this is like one trend to definitely like keep track of, and I'll link this in the description below. This Twitter Spaces happened yesterday. It basically had like all the FriendTech whales basically talking about how bullish they are. It definitely sounded euphoric, like top signal vibes. But like in like a bull market, like a FriendTech bull market, right? Like we can have top signals for like weeks and months. And if you want to hear like the bull case and how frothy it might seem, I recommend listening to this in like 2x speed. I'll link it in the description below. And right now, I mentioned that FriendTech has a $29 million TVL, and I was kind of thinking about, okay, like where can it potentially peak at? And I was kind of looking into like the Blur airdrop, where people were speculating on NFTs to hopefully get the airdrop, and no one really bought into it until like the Blur token launched, and then everyone like tried to farm and like got absolutely like destroyed, like Machi Big Brother and whatnot. And Blur pre-airdrop peaked at like roughly $48 million. So maybe that's like a good like first target for FriendTech to hit before hitting like a first correction. But also, right, like Blur like targeted like NFT people and some token people, whereas FriendTech targets a lot, like the total addressable market of FriendTech is like much bigger, right? So like maybe 50 million is like FUD, and maybe it like peaks at like 69 million, and then like hits a correction. And I think, yeah, like I think 50 to 70 million is like the peak TVL it can hit at like the current iteration of the product, which is like gated key rooms or gated chat rooms. I do know like some devs are working on like primitives like perps, lending, and like random like DeFi aspects on top of FriendTech, which might elevate the entire experience and which might elevate like the TVL cap in the future. But I think that with the current fee structure, the current like features, I think that it's gonna have a hard time like keep going up only, because at some point, right, people are going to sell because they're not getting like that much utility, and the only way to like take profits on your key hold, on like the keys that you hold, is to sell them, right? Like, you know, like you have unrealized profits, like if it goes up too much, like you're going to sell, right? So that's kind of something to be aware of. And this is like my plan. We just started month 2 of the airdrop farming. And as we approach months 3 and 4, I think the incentive to hold keys goes lower, because the incentive to just like hold, like buy and hold, is because of the airdrop. And with lower TVL, the points are less diluted. But as more and more people get hyped, more people onboard this ecosystem, the TVL goes up, the airdrop points become more diluted, and there's going to be less incentives to, you know, optimize for the airdrop by holding. So I think, you know, as we approach months 3, 4, 5, 6, people are gonna like trade keys. They're gonna like try to like not optimize for the airdrop, and then I can definitely see people like sell, like, or like the average key price selling off. So for me, like I'm basically all in keys. Like whatever like I make, I just like reinvest into other keys. But maybe at the beginning of like month 3 or like middle of month 3, maybe I'll do like a 50-50 ratio approach, where I have like 50% of my portfolio into keys and 50% into ether, and then that way, if there are dips, I'm not like totally wrecked, and then I can kind of scoop some cheaper keys along the line. But who knows? Like I have no idea what I'm doing. But to wrap things up, I do want to talk about this trend of the rise of mass consumer apps, because I think, you know, we had 2 crypto bubbles in 2017 and in 2021, led by hyper speculation, and I think people are tired of like this Ponzonomic stuff, like the pure bubbles. You can argue that FriendTech is kind of like Ponzonomic, but you know, like at least it has potential to be like a mass consumer app, right? And I think the next bull market has to be led by people like using actual apps. Because like I talk to my friends, I talk to like, you know, my loved ones, and they all think like it's a scam, right? Because like even if crypto goes to 0, like I'm going to be destroyed, like in terms of like my net worth, like, you know, and like some like other 20-30-year-olds will be destroyed, but it's not really going to cause like a systemic risk to like overall society, right? So there has to be like apps and features, like products that people use. And I've noticed a trend of base chain as like the hub of consumer apps. So FriendTech is on base chain, and there's also like this game called Parallel. Their token's been doing pretty well. They raised $50 million, and it's also going up only. And later this month, I'll make a video on another consumer app that no one's talking about for whatever reason. And it's called Blackbird. It's also on base chain. That I think, you know, by early 2024, I think it's like this app is going to be more talked about than FriendTech. And what is it? It's an eat to earn app. Okay, it's an eat to earn app. So you dine in at restaurants and you get points. And I've been going to restaurants. I've been going to Manhattan, like Brooklyn, every single day just to farm this thing. And here are the receipts, right? I get ice cream, I get points. I get pizza, I get points. I get Vietnamese food, like vermicelli bowls, like steak, I get points. And you know, it's been a lot of fun. I've been grinding this. Like on-chain yields have dried up so much that I have to go to real life world yields. You know, like real world assets, right? Like that's that's kind of what I've been talking about. And I've gotten so often that like this is like the manager for Madame Bo, like a Vietnamese place, and he's like, oh, like, who are you, right? And I'm like, why? And he's like, why are you wearing a farmer hat? Oh, because I'm a farmer. I'm a farmer tyke, right? So, you know, getting friendly with managers. This is like the owner of Upside. His name's like Noam, and you know, he's like, yeah, like I see you all the time. So, you know, I think it's a really cool, novel concept. And I think with Eat to Earn, it's different from Walk to Earn, because Walk to Earn, like people like just walk around and they don't really consume anything. But at least with Eat to Earn, I'm like consuming something, right? I'm creating some economic value by purchasing like a food product. And I think, you know, there can be some customer lifetime value, like, you know, improving the restaurant to consumer relationship aspects that I think will be interesting. The founders are super legit. They raised a bunch of money. And I'm really excited, right? And, you know, the Vietnamese restaurant guy, he gave me some free spring rolls because I went there the 3rd time. You know, so it's cool stuff there. And I've been tracking all my farming earnings, my weight. Weirdly enough, I've been losing weight since I started doing this. And, you know, I think these coins are going to be worth a bunch, potentially. But I'll talk about it in my next video. You know, stay tuned, subscribe, like whatever. Eat to earn, right? I think that's kind of cool. And, you know, it's cool to see this trend of, you know, like not only focusing on chain, but let's kind of tie in like the real world, right? Like FriendTech, we're tying in real people like myself. You know, Blackbird, we're tying in restaurants, food, you know, getting consumers to behave in a certain way, using token incentives. I think that's kind of cool. So, you know, hopefully this video was useful, and stay tuned for this next video. And hopefully you learned, you know, a decent amount around FriendTech and like how to optimize for your ROI and for airdrop farming. So thank you guys for watching, and see you guys another time. Bye-bye.